Migration. Generally speaking, every movement of individuals to a new area or country, mostly in group, from a geographical area to another, determined by changes in environmental, demographic, physiological conditions, or due to climatic changes, famines, search of better life conditions. Referring to a more recent phenomena, these movements may also be determined by complex economic and cultural causes. The phenomenon of migration is as old as man. We are talking about an individual, a group, or even an entire population. Human being has always been moving from one part of the earth to another in search of better life conditions. Wars, social conflicts, religious intolerance were just some of the causes which determined the migratory movements, given that the primary reason was always the economic one. In the development of the European industrial economy, people moved from a peripheral area to a central one of the capitalist economy, with the prospect of an unemployed manual labor. Concretely, in this first phase, flows coming from southern European countries and the Mediterranean basin were often solicited by specific recruitment policies of Central and Northern European countries. If you look at recent history, 1973 marks the temporal boundary between two different periods of migration flows. In the 50s and 60s, at least in Europe, the international migration had a precise role, providing countries the manpower to post-war reconstruction and the following long period of expansion. After 1973, the economic recession provokes the recruitment of more restrictive immigration policies, which partially hindered the arrival of non-European, while the repatriation were encouraged. Since the late 80s, following the democratization process which involved countries of Eastern Europe, it was recognized or was in the process of recognition the freedom to expatriate. This made possible a major east-west migration. During the economic boom of the 30 years after World War II, the industrialized countries of North America, Western Europe, and Oceania were in need of workforce and actively recruited immigrants from regions such as North Africa, Southern Europe, the Indian subcontinent, and the Caribbean. This phase, however, ended abruptly in the mid-70s, when the demand for low-skilled immigrants disappeared, especially in Western Europe, under the effect of different trends, including the end of the afterwar boom and the following slowdown in economic growth, the decline of traditional industries, which occupied a large workforce, and the introduction of new technologies, which required much capital but fewer manual workers. The increase in unemployment and the inability of governments to repatriate immigrant workers employed under fixed-term contracts added to the arrival of new immigrants in the framework of family reunification. The number of potential migrants is growing, but no country is willing to receive them. Europe has always been a land of migration, as an area of expatriation and as destination for people seeking a better life. And in Europe, the Mediterranean has always been center of many civilization phases, because it represents a crossing point for peoples and individuals. In particular, the Mediterranean represents today a migratory region, and it includes the Schengen area, the European Union's external border, controlled by walls and by the need to provide a visa for those who want to cross it. Some European countries are, more than others, destination of migratory movements, which develop in the Mediterranean. Germany, the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, and France for the number of foreign residents. Germany, Sweden, Italy, France, Hungary, and the United Kingdom for the number of asylum applications, according to Eurostat data of 2014. Currently, asylum seekers mainly come from Syria, 49%, Afghanistan 21%, Iraq 8%, and Eritrea 4%. The main migratory routes towards the European Union are four, and are concentrated, in fact, almost all in this region. The first one is that of the central Mediterranean. starting from North Africa, in particular from Libya, and it is crossed by people fleeing from sub-Saharan Africa and Middle East. The second one is that of the Eastern Mediterranean, stretching from Turkey to Greece, Bulgaria and Cyprus. The third one is that of the Western Mediterranean, ranging from North Africa to Spain. And finally, the Balkan route to enter Europe from Kosovo, Afghanistan and Syria. In 2015, about 1 million people crossed the Mediterranean. This is the highest figure ever, considering that they were 250,000 in 2014, 60,000 in 2013 and 22,000 in 2012. Of these million people, 856,000 have landed in Greece and 153,000 in Italy. According to data of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, between January the 1st and October the 31st of the current year, 331,016 people arrived in Europe, of which 169,641 in Greece and 158,974 in Italy. The tragic number of people who died while crossing the Mediterranean in 2016 amounts to 3,949, the highest number ever. Often, the approach to the immigration issue is reduced in terms of being opposed or not to this phenomenon, a dichotomy of thought that is limiting and wrong. Firstly, because the phenomenon of immigration cannot be stopped. It is a historical event that you have to deal with, knowing that you cannot win. You can control, contain, and manage it, but it cannot be stopped.